Okay, hey guys. Welcome to the first podcast episode of the Accented Stoic. Super excited to do this. My name is Alani Keafiso, and I'm really excited to be able to do this podcast. What is the Accented Stoic? So, a little bit of an introduction. The Accented Stoic is something I came up with just for the podcast and kind of what I wanted the overall general theme of the podcast to be, I guess. Stoicism, as I believe it, right, is ancient philosophies and all these things about you know mastering the mind over the world and all of these other big things. And I was struggling to encompass the idea of what it really means to have a podcast that thinks deeply and kind of takes the inner state of mind and brings it out to reflect upon, to be able to talk about, to dissect, and ultimately to share so that other people can use these insights to ultimately help themselves in this life of, trying to figure out what it is that we're trying to figure out for our end goals, right? Happiness, purpose, meaning, all of those kinds of things. And so the accented part comes on a modern twist of I guess, Stoicism, right? Like, I feel like philosophies and things are changing as the world, and maybe not even necessarily changing, but more so just like being found again, I guess. I'm sure that there is somebody somewhere out there in the world that has once discovered a lot of these ideas and concepts of mastering the mind over the world and being able to, I guess, just figure out your life and structure your mindset in different ways. And so I feel like a lot of these topics are not necessarily new. They're just being brought up again and evolving and being used for our day-to-day life here and now, right? And so the accented is kind of a like that variation, the variation of stoicism, kind of in an evolutionary type of way, but in a way where it allows us to be able to modernize these things, I guess, right? And so the phonetic spelling of accented is kind of that modern take on the idea of stoicism, right? So that is kind of the general gist and theme of this podcast and what I hope for it to be. And my hopes and dreams for this podcast are that it is a place where ideas can be brought out, can be reflected upon, and ultimately be used to better one's life on their goals and the people that they want to become, and who it is that they want to become. So without further ado, let us jump into this podcast episode. Today's episode is called The Art of Becoming. And this is something that I've been reflecting heavily upon. I've been reflecting a lot upon, especially with the new year coming around, right? Like, who is it that I want to become this year? Who is it that I have become in these past years? And so, with that thought in mind, had I had typically structured the idea of becoming and who I wanted to be as an individual as kind of an end destination, right? Like, I want to be a successful business owner one day, or I want to be a successful, husband or father or content creator, right? So, like, I want to be these things. And I find it interesting because as I tell myself those things, there's to reach that goal, there are a set amount of qualifications or set specific skill sets, if you want to say, that need to be observed, that need to be hit upon within, the being a successful entrepreneur or business owner, right? So let's take the successful business owner, for example. A successful business owner means that they have, one, started a business, two, it is profitable, right? So it's, generating money, doing well, and typically three, like, has an exit, right? Like, that's more or less what it means to have past tense been a successful business owner. But within those, even within those three things, there are a lot of skills or qualifications that need to be had before you can achieve those things, right? And so you can kind of look at them as milestones of trying to become that successful person, right? Like it's one big skill set tree, right? For anyone who's played video games, right, it's kind of like a skill tree thing. And you have, resources that you can buy skills. And as you continuously buy skills and level up, you can, ultimately make your way up to conquering, the said game or destination or goal. And so I view becoming, in that destination format type of way in a similar mindset, right? Like being able to use my resources properly to be able to buy those skill sets that ultimately stack up to being what a successful, business owner or entrepreneur is. And so typically those successful business owners or entrepreneurs, as the skill sets break out, have very core foundational things that allow them to move forward, right? Discipline is probably one of them. Being able to work hard is another one. Being able to understand delayed gratification and sacrifice is probably another one, right? And so all of these core elements kind of contribute to that end goal of being that successful, business owner. But what I think is interesting to think about is the ongoing continuum of becoming, right? The mindset that you want to be a healthy person, right? Or the mindset that you want to be a good friend or a good father, a good husband, right? Like the idea that you're going to do these things on a continual basis. What does that look like? Because there is no end goal for that, right? Like being a good father is not like a checklist item of things. Like it's a continual state of who you are as a person, right? And so as I've thought about that, I've thought about, what that truly means and like how that helps. Like how do I understand how to continuously get or quotes buy these skills in this skill set tree for me to be able to actually continuously do, becoming whatever it is that I want to become. And so I think it's interesting to think about on a continual basis because you still have to buy those skills, right? Like those skills have to continuously be bought. However, it seems like it's almost like a continuous state of being and less of like a happy end destination achieved, right? Like for that successful business owner, when you buy all those skills and stack it all the way up till, you get to the really high leverage skills and then you basically become, the business owner that you want it to be, hit the milestone, sell the business. At that point, like you have all these skills and you hit that destination, but on the continuum of being a good father, there are no such things. Like even when you pass, if you have a daughter and you pass your daughter off at some point, that doesn't mean that you are no longer a father and don't have to, use those skills that you acquired of being a good father. You still have to use those skills, but those skills might be applied in a different manner now that she's no longer under your roof, now that you're no longer, feeding her and taking care of her monetarily in that way. And so thinking about that, right, it's like, well, what drives me, what motivates me for that continuous state of being, and what are goals that I can set for, being a good friend or being a good person. Like what motivates me to get there if there is no end destination? It's just like a continuous forever. And I think what motivates a person is the idea of their identity being tied to who they are as a person when they're trying to become the person that they want to be. Like taking it in a different way, like I want to be successful at my career, right? Or the identity that I want to be, even simpler, right? Like I want to be a hardworking person, Well, what does a hardworking person, what kind of attributes does that person show? What kind of things does that person do? Well, typically a hardworking person will wake up and work when nobody else is willing to. They will also stay later than nobody else is willing to. They will do the workouts and push more reps when nobody is looking, right? Like being a hardworking person kind of leaks into a lot of quote individual people of who you are. And so as you focus your identity on those things, I've found as I've focused my identity on those particular traits and less about the actual end goal or destination, I found that the byproduct of those traits typically ends up to be working out those byproducts of what you want them to be anyways, right? And so a hardworking person paired with, other characteristics and traits typically will already give you the byproducts of successful, career and businesses and all that kind of stuff. Now, do I think that goals that motivate you should not be used? 100% I think they should be used, right? Like you should set that end destination and goal in your mind to sell the business one day and to be able to, get to the, lean body mass percentage that you want to be at some point. But I think that it should be used more as the like direction and guidance on the goal and less about fixating on that, right? Like tying your worth to the goal and less to the identity, I personally have felt is more challenging to actually hit the small term goals that you want to in your everyday life, because if the variables don't pan out in the way that you want them to, it's very easy for you to spiral, right? Spiral downwards. When you link yourself to the goal of I want to lose 40 pounds, and every day you step on the scale, and if at one point that scale goes up, suddenly you feel as if, I did something wrong, something happened yesterday. It's because I walked a little bit less. It's because I didn't track the cookie that I ate and now I'm getting heavier, right? Where it might not actually be that. It very well could be that you worked out a little bit harder. Maybe your recovery is holding a little bit more water in, which is a good thing, right? And so the scale weight is going up a little bit, but it'll come back down, right? But if you let yourself spiral because the scale weights went up, then it is harder for you to not spiral yourself down, right? And so when you shift this mindset, and James Clear, by the way, this is something that I found from James Clear, and I think it's brilliant and magnificent. It's a lot easier for you to hit your goals when you are focused more on the identity and it's tied to the identity and less tied to the goal in mind, right? The goal becomes the byproduct of the identity. Like a healthy person, what would a healthy person do? A healthy person will naturally get to that lower body fat percentage. They will lose that 40 pounds if they want to lose that 40 pounds. That will naturally happen. But the person who is healthy and focused on being healthy, even if the scale weight goes up, if you know that the decisive moments that you are making, the decisions that you are making in those particular moments are what a healthy person would do, then it becomes very clear that you're more concerned about being healthy, and the byproduct of what happens at the very end will naturally just be that you lose your weight, right? And so you're less worried about the scale weight and you're more worried about your recovery. How are you sleeping? Are you just tracking proteins? Or are you tracking proteins, carbs, and fats? Like, are you doing cardio? If you did all these things and the scale weight went up, then you kind of know that, well, that's okay. I'm pretty sure that there's something in the back end that's working. If I track this for a long enough period of time, I'm sure I'll see the trend line go down, which typically it does, right? It's focusing more on the trend line and less on the actual, day-to-day scale weight is, I typically feel, has been very helpful for me in the fitness realm of things, right? And so tying yourself to the identity, I feel like is helps a lot to be able to hit the goals that you want to hit and to do the things that you want to do, right? And in becoming the person that you want to become. And so I now that we've kind of talked about, the skill set tree and, the binary versus the continuum of decisions of who you want to become, binary meaning fixed and continuum meaning like on a scale, on a spectrum. One of the questions that I like to ask myself is about who I want to become, right? Like how deciding about like who it is that you want to become. And I got this from a podcast that was done with Modern Wisdom, Chris Williamson, and I believe his name is Alain de Botton. I believe he's a British philosopher, brilliant guy, super great episode, and I would go check it out for sure. But one thing he said, and this pertained more to like what it is that you want to do in your life. But the question that he asked was if you knew that you had a 100% success rate on what it is you wanted to do in life, what would you do? And so I like to change that when thinking about myself. And I like to change that into if you had a 100%, if you had a 100% success rate on the person you wanted to become, who would you choose to be? And so I think it poses an interesting question, right? Because it makes you reflect upon who you are as an individual now and who you think you could become or want to become in regards to your circumstances as well. Like right now, you might be the person that you wanted to be 5 years ago or 10 years ago or even a year ago. But now that you've achieved that, who is it that you want to be now? Where is it that you want to go now? Now that you've, that you are the person that you are, that you have, attained the skill sets to be the person of who you are as an individual now. And I like to ask myself that question a lot because it brings me into a state of reflection, of self-reflection, in the sense that I need to know who it is that I am now. And then I need to reflect upon, my weak points and my strong points and where I need to allocate resources to becoming the person I want to become in the future. And so asking myself this question has helped me to reflect deeply upon that. And I think it's interesting because I look at myself now and I do believe that I am the person that I wanted to be 3 years ago, right? For the goals that I had set out and set in mind. But now I have higher goals, right? And so it's always that continuum of of who it is that you want to be and who it is that you have become. And so, I have goals that I have in mind now that I want to be and who it is that I want to be. And so it's about asking myself that if I had that 100% success rate, if I knew that who it is I set out to be, I would eventually become, who is it that I would be, right? I would be a great father and a great husband. I would be a successful, content creator and podcaster. I would be a successful business owner, right? Like that is who I have set out to be in terms of the destinations and the end goals, but those are very vague, right? Like there's not a lot of detail in those things. Like being a good father can encompass a lot of things, and to a different point, can be different in terms of the opinions of other people, right? Like viewed differently from other people. A good father might look differently for one person to another. And so that is also something to keep in mind, right? When it is of who you are choosing to become, the idea of that who you choose to become needs to come from a personal place, right? From deep within you, I guess I would say, because a lot of people think that, being a successful, business owner or successful father or husband or friend or whatever the case is at different levels. And so I think it ultimately comes down, in my personal opinion, that it ultimately comes down to which one gives you the most meaning and purpose in life and which one makes you the happiest, right? What does being a good father mean to you that gives you purpose and meaning and fulfills you in this life, right? What does that look like to you? And so it's a question that I ask a lot, that I reflect heavily upon, that I have truly reflected upon a lot in these last few weeks, for sure, especially preparing for this podcast. And so when it comes to understanding who it is that you want to become, now kind of talking about like how to become the person that you want to become. And so I have I have this quote from C.S. Lewis that I absolutely love. It's been something that I think about honestly a lot throughout my week. And it's this quote from C.S. Lewis that says, "The present is the point at which time touches eternity." And I remember reading this a few years ago and just, being absolutely mind blown about it. So, like, I thought it was the most spectacular thing I'd ever heard. And the reason being is because, I look at life, and I look at, experiences that we have, and the past is gone, right? Like, the past is something that we reflect on and we use to hope, in hopes to improve, the moments we have now, that we can use those experiences to learn and to understand what it is that we can do moving forward. And the present is imagined and it's hopeful and it's something that you look towards and you build towards, right? But the present there's nothing like the present. It is now. It is one continuous moment. Like the moment that you are currently living in, there's nothing like this moment. It's just you and the things that are happening around you. And so I think that to be so interesting, especially in looking at things from the scope of who it is that you want to become, right? Like, who you were in the past, you can use to reflect upon to who you want to be in the future, and how it is you went about those, and use those tactics and those skills of what you acquired in the past to move yourself forward for the future. But really what it comes down to is every single small little moment, strung together to create your life. Like, your life is just one continuous present moment just strung together that like leaks out as the past and moves forward as the future. And I think that's so interesting that it's like one clicking time, like ticking time clock that just moves forward and forward, inch by inch. And what you do in this current moment in time decides who you are as a person moving forward, and slowly replaces who you were in the past. Forever changing and forever evolving. And so what it really comes down to is the idea that you need to understand how to make the small moments count, right? Like, what is it that you are doing in the small moments? Because those small moments woven together will create who you want to be as an individual, right? The same way that seconds weave together to create years, right? Like, on the grand scheme of things, like, decades are just years, which are just scaled all the way down, just seconds, right? They're just small little building blocks that build this enormous life of who you are as a person. And so I think that stringing those small moments together that you have now are so extremely important, right? Like, it's about just choosing to cast a vote of who you want to be more times than not of who you were or who you do not want to be, right? And so this present moment, like, truly, and the more I reflect on it, like, truly there is nothing like the present moment. Like, the times that I have felt closest to like true peace and serenity are the times where I can fully live in the present moment, not in the past, reflecting on things that had happened and being either reminiscent, nostalgic, or regretful. Not in the future where I'm being hopeful and I'm thinking about what I could do in this life. The times that I felt true peace and serenity are the times where I'm here in the present now, where the only thing I can reflect on is what is happening now. What colors do I see? What am I hearing at this current moment in time? What do I feel? What does it smell like, right? Like, what do I notice? How are people reacting right now, right? Being here in the present moment, I feel like there is an underestimated amount of value held in the skill of being able to truly be present. I feel like that is a very hard thing for a lot of people to do, including me. And it's it's a hard thing to do because it's a hard thing to judge, in my personal opinion, of how much is too much of being in the present. Like, you have to still look at the future. You have to still reflect on the future and set those goals. You need to still look at the past and see what happened and what was wrong and what needed fixing. But at some point in time, you need to also understand that as you reflect on these things, a lot of those things cannot change or cannot happen at that current state of moment that you are in. Like, when you are eating with your family and you are eating dinner, you cannot do anything about what somebody said in the past 5 years ago. And you currently can't do anything to fix the business right now because it needs time to be able to process and to fix itself and to be able to, acquire data. And you can't be sitting there thinking about, what's going to happen with the ads, and I wonder how they're going to perform over the next 7 days, and if they perform this way, then I will do this, and if they don't, then I will do this. Like, there is nothing that you can do for that moment. So what you can do is sit there presently with your family and enjoy that moment together, right? And try to cast that vote for the person that you want to become. I feel like as I've kind of split up the ideas of like who it is that I want to be, I've kind of leaned more towards characteristic traits of the person I want to be and less about cutouts of people that I want to be. Like, what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that instead of focusing on the different types of versions of people I want to be, I break everything down on that skill set tree and I try to find all of the overlaps of the skills for those people. A good father and a good husband are both loving and both kind and both patient. A good father might be slightly more stern potentially. And they both have listening and all those good stuff. But listening is also a good quality to have for being a good business owner and for being, a good, content creator and podcaster and all of these different things. And so as I focus on the attributes that kind of bleed into multiples, you kind of understand that regardless of the situation that you're put in of who it is you need to be, you reflect on that individual trait and characteristic, and you ask yourself, in that situation, what would that person do? In a listening situation, that listening characteristic and trait can go towards being a good podcaster, being a good, business owner, being a good father, and being a good husband. And so as you kind of perfect that trait and as you understand that that is actually who I'm trying to tie myself to in terms of the identity of the person I want to be, that becomes easier to do instead of trying to split your mental energy in 5 different buckets of who it is you want to be as a person. All right, we are back. I had a friend come through, and so did not realize that was going to happen. Anyways, so kind of wrapping up that last point, right? It's not about perfection. Like, you don't need to be perfect in that thing. You just have to do it more times than not. on a consistent basis, right? And so the last point that I kind of want to talk about, and can't remember where I got this from. I try to source all of my material from where I feel I got it from, but this point that I have is life as a movie character, right? Envisioning your life as a movie character. And so if you think about the person you want to become, who you are ideally at the end of this life, or even at the end of your goals, you are this person at the very end, and that is who the character is at the end of the movie, right? And that is the person that they are after they've conquered the monster or the obstacle, or they've beat the big thing in life, and they are now the hero at the very end of the movie, right? And then you start the movie with who you are as the individual now, right? The person that you are now. Thinking about that and thinking of it in terms of that timeline, what does that character have to go through to hit the end goal of who they want to be, right? Like, what does that look like at the very end of the movie? All of these things have to happen. The character probably has to go through some hardships and trials and lose a little bit and learn from their mistakes and their failures, and then also win. And the big battle has to happen, and all of these things need to occur before the character becomes the hero at the end. And so going from the protagonist to the hero at the very end, right? There's a lot of things that have to happen. And so when you think about it that way, like, naturally you have to go through all of these things. Like, naturally you are going to struggle through a lot of things in life. That's just like how it is, and what the price is of who it is you want to become. And so I like to think about it in those ways and in those situations, for specifically when times get hard and the things that I'm doing feel repetitive and monotonous and the grind is just unbelievable. I like to think of it that way because it helps me understand that this is the character arc. Like, this is the story. This is how I'm going to become, the hero that I want to be, like the person that I want to be and that I need to be. And so being able to look at your life in such a reflective and introspective way, I think is super beneficial, in that third person type of way. Being able to understand that, like, you have to go through the hard times. It is the price of becoming who it is that you want to be. And so kind of to wrap up this episode, right, just the takeaways and things, it's just, you don't have to be perfect. Like, you just need to do it more times than not, even if it's by 1 point, even if it's by 51%. Being able to understand the allocation of your resources, of time, of energy, of money, like being able to properly put those in the places that you want to be, and then focusing on the current moment of now to understand how do you use those resources to buy those skill sets that you need, right, to become the person that you want to be. And then focusing on the characteristic traits of the aggregate characteristic traits of the people that you want to be, the versions of you want to be, so that you can kind of centralize who it is that you want to become, and kind of allocate your energy and resources to the base core things that matter, right? Understanding that there are seasons, and the seasons will come and go, and they will change, and you are not in the season forever. And the season could look long. It really could. It could be 5 years. It could be 10 years. But the season will not be forever. And so understanding that there is an end to the season, and it will eventually shift, and it will eventually change. As you understand that, that will help you understand to, becoming who it is that you want to be. So that is the first podcast episode. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. And I'm going to be, uploading this on all podcasting platforms, and I also will be linking a Substack down below for you to follow. This will be kind of where I outline the podcast episodes prior to uploading the podcasts and doing the podcasts. And so this is going to kind of be where I put my thoughts out there, write some essays and all that kind of stuff, longer forms of content for you to be able to read. And eventually I'm going to start pumping out newsletters and stuff like that. So go and subscribe to the Substack as well. Obviously to the YouTube. And yeah, thank you so much for listening. Hope this helped. Yeah.